Well, good morning, and thank you for participating in today's town hall meeting. We're here in Corley Auditorium, and along with members of President's Cabinet, we all thank you for being part of this town hall meeting. I'm joined this morning by other campus leaders, Dr. Brad Hodson, Darren Fullerton, Rob Youst, and Jared Bregman. Provost Dr. Paula Carson had a previous commitment and is unable to join us today. Today we will share information and address questions on a few topics that are critical to Missouri Southern, including enrollment, the state and institutional budget, and our ongoing response to COVID-19. First, I would like to share a few big picture perspectives and briefly discuss three initiatives. This semester, our goal has been to provide our students with a degree of in-person instruction and engagement with extensive safety measures in place to minimize risk to students, faculty, staff, and the larger community. Over the first 5 weeks of the semester, we have largely been successful in achieving our goal. I am extraordinarily grateful to our faculty and staff who continue to go above and beyond to provide our students with a quality experience during these challenging times. I know firsthand that many of our students are very grateful for your efforts. Regarding budget, Vice President Youst will share updates in a few minutes, but it is clear that the planning we have done and the steps we have taken, including furloughs, have been difficult but effective in managing our serious budget challenge. In essence, we have chosen to not kick the can down the road, but instead have been proactive to help ensure the future viability and vitality of Missouri Southern. I believe we will look back and realize that the current actions taken by our Board of Governors and campus will have served our campus and university well into the future. Next, I want to share with you three forward-looking initiatives. The first is related to student success. To support student retention and success, we will develop a student emergency grant program that will provide students with small grants to address emergency needs to help overcome obstacles to continuing as Lions. We know that many of our students face financial challenges, and some leave us because they cannot afford an unanticipated small car repair, medical expense, travel due to serious illness or death of a family member, or other immediate challenges. I'm asking Vice President Fullerton to lead efforts to develop criteria and a process, and I'm asking Dr. Hodson and his team to secure charitable gifts to the Missouri Southern Foundation to fund this initiative, which will be launched in January. Number two, IT and data security. I think we all understand that information and data security is an important challenge to large organizations, including universities. It's commonplace to hear of phishing attempts, data breaches that compromise sensitive information, and even organizations being asked for ransom to secure their own digital information. As a campus, we need to ensure that we have implemented best practices to secure our systems and data, and to prevent breaches that can cause financial and reputational harm to individuals and our university. Rob Youst is working with our Chief Information Officer, Don Mahalka, on this project, who will present a plan based on best practices to President's Cabinet on Monday. Progress in this critical area will require all of our support, including changes in some of our daily work habits and practices. As an aside, I do want to assure you that this is not in response to any current problem that we have. It's really about preventing a future problem. And third, listening and learning sessions. I really need your help to continue to learn about Missouri Southern. And I will be hosting a series of listening sessions for small groups in the coming weeks. First, I'll meet with the last three cohorts of Service Champ Award recipients. The next session will be with most recently tenured faculty, and I will also continue to meet with small groups of students. This past Wednesday night, I met with the Women in Science Club. What a truly amazing group of students. It was great. As an aside, I finally found a group that appreciates science jokes, which I will not subject you to today. Next, we will hear an update from Vice President Darren Fullerton. In welcoming him to the podium, with his permission, I share with you that Darren will be retiring at the end of the calendar year. There will be more opportunities to acknowledge his many years of outstanding service to Missouri Southern, but today I know I speak for so many when I say that Darren has made a tremendous positive impact on our university and its students. Darren.
Thank you, Dr. Van Galen, for that welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. It's a beautiful day outside, and we know Friday's a busy time, so we appreciate you taking time to join us today. I'll keep my comments brief. I've been asked to cover two areas, some with enrollment numbers and some information that may be of interest to you there, and then also give an update on the COVID task force and the efforts that are going on with the faculty and staff that make up that committee as well. We have our census numbers, and we'll just provide a little information to give you the ballpark of where we are. Our head count, we had 5,045 students. Credit hours, just under 58,000 credit hours. The important thing here is in the midst of COVID and with many schools struggling, we were able to hit our budget benchmarks. And you'll hear more about that from Vice President Hughes. And so I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the many faculty, staff, and administration on campus that worked hard to make sure that we not only recruited students, we retained our students, and we were able to get them enrolled for the fall classes. And so we greatly appreciate that. Some other things of note, especially with COVID, some of our faculty have asked how many online-only students. For this semester, we have 1,090 students that are taking only online classes. And so we have seen a little increase in that for the fall semester. A couple other things of note that we thought it is interesting to share with you. So far, and again, the process is still in the works, students are getting their financial aid paperwork in daily, and so we'll still award financial aid dollars throughout the semester. But as of Tuesday, we had awarded over $11 million in federal financial aid. We have also awarded $1.1 million in state financial aid to our students. And so this is aid that is not institutional dollars, institutional scholarships, or money that comes from the university. This is money that we are able to pass on to our students to help them in securing their education. As Dr. Van Galen alluded to earlier, life happens, and life is definitely happening for many of our students right now, with limited work opportunities in some of the jobs in the community, family pressures at home. COVID has brought a whole new set of challenges to our students. And so again, any type of assistance that we can provide for them is greatly beneficial. And we are definitely looking forward to working on the emergency grant for those students. Another number that we thought was of merit is that over 3,300 of our students have their balance paid within $50 or less. And so that's a tremendous effort on the students' part, but also on the faculty and the staff that are encouraging the students to get their paperwork in on time, make the payment plan arrangements, and to make sure that we have a successful semester. And so again, all of those things add together to make it a smoother transition for those students. So we want to say thank you to everyone that had a part in that. One thing that is not budget related directly to headcount, but we wanted to mention also, was a congratulations to Project Stay. And we announced this at the board meeting this week. Project Stay is one of our federal grant programs, as you know, and they were awarded another 5-year contract with the federal government. They received just under $300,000 a year, so that'll be a total of over $1.4 million over the 5-year period. So we want to say congratulations to Dr. Deborah Fort and her team in a successful grant application for that. At this time, I'll transition into our COVID update. And I can't speak highly enough of the task force members. We started with an 18-member task force, and I believe we're up to 32 at this point. All areas of campus are represented. You have students, we have a board of governors representative, administration, but primarily faculty and staff are serving on that task force. This committee and task force meets weekly. We're scheduled for an hour and a half, and most of the time we go longer. That task force is dedicated to trying to keep our students in a quality educational experience and a face-to-face experience if it is all possible. And we want to do that in a safe and enriching manner for those students. And so we want to say thank you to that group. And if you haven't been to the COVID webpage off of Missouri Southern's main webpage, we encourage you to click the banner in the middle of that page. There is a tremendous amount of information on that page. We have numerous videos, instructional videos, mask videos, and other information on there. Flyers that can be used to remind students, faculty, and staff about precautions, hand washing, mask wear, and so on. The main focus of the task force currently is to work on a contingency planning document. You've seen many universities or many agencies have different phases, and some of them are in a countdown phase going back to normal. We are looking at phases both ways. If the numbers escalate, what does that mean for us? Or when the numbers decrease, what does that mean for us, and what can we open up or change or enrich for the campus? So we have students, faculty, staff, administration, Board of Governors, and even some community members weighing in on decisions that can help us make sure that we're providing a safe environment, but an enriching environment for our students, and continue with the quality of education that not only our students, but this community expects from Missouri Southern. We encourage you again, the COVID webpage is emergency.mssu.edu if you haven't looked at that. The numbers in the Joplin area and in Jasper County and the region are rising, not in great leaps, but they're steadily rising. And so again, we want to say thank you for the efforts that the campus has done so far, but we also want to encourage you. Continue to do the things that we have done that have gotten us to this point in the semester. Many colleges and universities have already pivoted and are totally online because they weren't able to maintain the social distancing or physical distancing that we have. They were not able to maintain their mask ordinance. And so I think that's a testament to the students, faculty, and staff at Missouri Southern. We are taking this seriously. You are following the guidelines set forth by the Centers for Disease Control. And I can't tell you how many times we have community members, and even this past week at our board meeting, 2 different board members came up. They see our students in the community. They are acting socially responsible. They are wearing masks, and that gives them a great sense of pride in our students that you are doing the right things to make sure that we're able to continue face-to-face classes. With that, I just want to say thank you again. Feel free to email. The members of the committee are on that COVID page, and so any of those members, or you can feel free to email myself. And if you have questions, this week, starting this next Wednesday, we'll also have a member of the CHART joining that committee, and so the CHART will be covering those committee meetings. And so we encourage you to ask questions, and we will try to keep you up to date as much as we can. The COVID dashboard is on that website, and that is updated weekly with the new numbers. But if you have questions, reach out to us, and thank you again for everything that you're doing to keep Missouri Southern safe. Thank you. Brad Hutt.
Thank you, Darren. I appreciate that. I have 2 items to cover. One is enrollment, and the second is state budget. First, we'll begin with first-time and freshman and transfer students. According to the freshman yield report from Banner, which has been used for many years to calculate yield, for the fall 2020, we saw a small increase in new first-time freshmen and first-time transfer students. It's important to remember that while it feels good to have a slight increase in freshman and transfer numbers, this comes at the end of a 3-year decrease in those numbers from the fall of 2016 when we had a record enrollment. In the fall of 16, we had 1,057 first-time freshmen and 667 first-time transfers. It's going to take quite a bit of work to get back to that level, but we're dedicated to achieving that and even beyond to fulfill Goal 1A of our strategic plan. But back to the fall of 2020, being in the black with freshmen and transfers is good news, and I want to thank the admissions team and all the faculty and staff across campus that were actively engaged in the recruitment and enrollment of our new students to campus. In fact, based on numbers circulated amongst the admissions directors across the state of Missouri, Missouri Southern State University was the only public university in the state to have an increase, no matter how small, in first-time freshmen and first-time transfer students. So we held our own this fall. It's a great first step back to getting to the levels of fall 2016 when we had over 1,000 new freshmen. As of today, our attention turns to the fall of 2021. We have set an ambitious goal to have 900 first-time freshmen and 500 first-time transfers 1 year from now, August of 2021, and it will be here before we know it. To accomplish that, we're going to work collaboratively across campus, as we always do, to execute a set of 8 strategies that have been developed to increase first-time freshmen and first-time transfer numbers. But those strategies also have a ripple effect to assist with retention of those students at their sophomore, junior, and senior year. And so this is an effort to not only impact recruitment but also retention. Those 8 strategies include marketing the quality of our academic programs, our faculty, our facilities, our graduates, rather than marketing price, repositioning our financial aid offerings, enhancing the recruitment experience for our prospective students, streamlining onboarding, and reducing MELT. And MELT is when students enroll. They might attend the first few days of classes, but for whatever reason they're not here on the 20th day. And so reducing that loss in those first 20 days of class is one of the 8 strategies. We will keep you posted as we move forward with that plan to increase recruitment and retention, but for now we are focused on August of 2021 and seeing that we have 900 new freshmen and 500 new transfer students. I will now transition to the state budget. You'll hear a little bit more about the university's budget in a moment from Rob Use, but currently state revenues, which are comprised primarily of income tax and sales tax, are tracking 1.5% ahead of projections. Now, it's important to note those projections were downgraded significantly in March, April, May as the COVID pandemic swept across the state of Missouri, and we saw sales tax revenue and income tax revenue dramatically decrease. So we're tracking ahead of projections, but those projections are not the same ones that were used to formulate the state budget in January. As of today, we anticipate no additional withholdings from the state of Missouri for our current fiscal year 21 budget before December 31st, but we also don't anticipate any release of previously withheld funds. The General Assembly will convene in January for their regular session, and the fiscal year 2022 budget will be high on their agenda. It's important to note that there are several factors that will impact the fall or the fiscal year 2022 budget, and when the House and Senate take that up in January. One is unemployment in Missouri continues to be high, which again continues to impact income tax revenue and sales tax revenue. Also, no one in the state government believes that the rollout of a vaccine will have an immediate effect on revenue for the state. COVID-19, what we're hearing from state officials, looks to be a 2 to 3 year impact on state revenue, and so there will not be an immediate bounce back with a vaccine as far as state revenue from income tax and sales tax is concerned. And then finally, you'll recall in August the voters in the state of Missouri passed Medicaid expansion, and it will have an impact on the state budget. Currently, budget officials are predicting roughly a $150 million negative impact on the general revenue budget. The general revenue budget is where public higher education, including Missouri Southern, gets its state appropriations. And so the actual amount is unknown, but it is believed to be a negative impact. So as you've heard me report before, we are in a wait-and-see mode with regard to the state budget. Perhaps no more withholdings this fiscal year, but certainly no release of revenue, and the budget cycle for fiscal year 22 with the General Assembly, which begins in January, will be a difficult one for all state agencies. Thank you. Now I think Rob Use has some information about the university's budget.
Thank you, Brad. Today I want to give you a brief update on where we are financially in comparison to what we anticipated our budget was going to be when it was adopted in July. If you recall, we have 2 main drivers of our budget, and that is tuition and state appropriation. So I'll touch briefly on both of those. First of all, tuition. When we prepare our budget, we turn to the experts such as Dr. Hodson and Mr. Fullerton and their respective teams for projections on where enrollment will be at census date. After consultation with them, our budget reflected an estimated 10% reduction in our head count and corresponding credit hours. As Darren mentioned previously, last Friday was our census date, which indicated a 9.9% reduction in both head count and credit hours, so their projections were spot on, and so were ours. Appropriations. You will recall that the state experienced a decrease in state revenue last year due to COVID-19. This was primarily the reason the state withheld $3.1 million of our allotment during the last quarter of last fiscal year. We were then told by the governor's office that this year, FY21's allotment, will be the same amount as the reduced amount from last year. And that is what is reflected in the budget and as actually what is being received today. As Dr. Hodson mentioned just a few minutes ago, there is no indications as of yet of further withholds this year, as of today. And I want to emphasize as of today because we're not sure what tomorrow will bring. Next, our operating expenses. After we determine what our estimated revenues are, which is mainly tuition and appropriations, as I mentioned, we then turn our attention to the expenses. As Dr. Van Galen mentioned, we took various steps in order to mitigate the anticipated reduction in revenue. The actions that we have taken are working. As I mentioned to the board's budget committee just 2 days ago, our actual expenses are right in line with where we thought we would be after approximately 1/4 of our way through this fiscal year. One of the strategies to address our budget, not only this year but in the long term, we offered a voluntary retirement incentive to our employees who are Mosher's retirement eligible as of December 31st, 2020. This approach will provide relief to our budget over time, not just this year, but in the future, due to some cases the costs of replacement positions being less, and then some positions we may not even fill. In July, the Board of Governors approved this plan, and today I want to give you a brief update on where we are. As I mentioned, we offered that retirement incentive to the Mosher's eligible employees, retiree eligible employees, as of December 31st, and there were 52 of those folks. Of those 52, 17 have chosen to accept the incentive and will be retiring at the end of this calendar year. Obviously, we wish those employees the very best in the next chapter of their lives and greatly appreciate their contributions to Missouri Southern. From a budgetary standpoint, moving forward, the voluntary retirement program will help us address many budget issues this year and years to come. Finally, I want to touch upon the CARES Act. As Dr. Van Galen mentioned in his opening remarks, our goal is to minimize risk to students, faculty, and staff caused by COVID-19. The federal government enacted the CARES Act to help universities and students cope with COVID-19 issues. To date, we have been reimbursed approximately $2.8 million of expenses that we incurred, and we have distributed approximately $2.4 million, both of those amounts from the CARES funds. The $2.4 million went to the students. That's all I have.
All right. Well, gentlemen, at this time, we are looking to see if we have any questions coming in live. And at this point, there has not been a single question that's come in. So you must be all really, really good in what you're saying. Is there any other final words that you might want to, maybe go ahead and take us out, and
Sure.
We'll see if there's any additional questions that come in while you do your last statement.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for joining us, and if there are additional questions, we'll address them. But, just a couple of closing thoughts, and I really want us to always think about our mission, which I think is very noble, right? To educate and graduate knowledgeable, responsible, successful global citizens. And I hope in your daily work here at Missouri Southern, you reflect on the value of that every one of us is an important role in making a difference in our students' lives. All of us positively impact the over 5,000 Lions that are part of our campus. And everyone plays a different role. Everyone's life is different every day. But I really want to encourage you to get out on campus, talk to our students, engage with them, and reflect on the difference you are making. I know all of us are very appreciative that we have such a strong campus community here that is committed to students. Heather, are there any questions before we wrap?
We actually had just a few come in.
Okay, great.
I guess when you tell none's coming in, then we're going to go ahead and get some, which
Okay.
is great. We love to have some questions. So let's do the first one here. It goes back to budget. So hopefully this will be Bob. With the budget being on track, where there'll be discussions on.
As we mentioned to the board, we will further examine where we are budgetarily later on this year, most likely in the end of December, right around January, to see about the state appropriation issue, because we're really not sure at this point, as I mentioned and Dr. Hodson mentioned as well. As of today, there have been no indications that we're going to have any withholds from the budget, but we still have another quarter to go before we really analyze where we're going to be budgetarily at the mid-year. So right now, those options will still always be on the table, but we're not in the position right now to talk about that because we're not sure where we're going to be. We are very hopeful that we do not have to go down that road, but we cannot say definitely one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. And this will be to you as well.
Of course.
Approximately, what is the dollar amount of funds that will be saved the remainder portion of this fiscal year as well as years to come with the retirement program? That might be a difficult one to calculate.
Yeah, well, that's hard to answer too because we have not discussed which positions of the 17 that we are going to replace, and if we do replace them, at what level that we will replace them. So that dollar amount cannot be calculated at this time.
All right. Here's another question probably for you, Mr. Fullerton. Why are the individuals who test negative being told to isolate? This discourages testing. Is that the case? So individuals who test negative are being told to isolate.
And it depends on, and again, we are dealing with probably 15 hours a day of COVID questions. And so I'm not a health professional, so we rely on the Joplin Health Department and the health center here on campus who are the medical professionals. We have some students that if they go out and get tested the actual day that they exhibit symptoms, the health professionals tell us they will test negative because they are too early in the process, and so it has not built up in their body to give them enough antibodies to test. And so if that person is symptomatic, they may have a negative test, but they may still be told that they need to isolate and or quarantine. And so if they have any questions, I strongly recommend they call the Wilcoxon Health Center or email the health center, and that information is on that COVID page also, because every single situation with a student, faculty, or staff member can be very different depending on the exposure, their symptoms, and what the process is. And so we don't want, unfortunately, there is not just a standard that fits all, and so it is very individualized. So we recommend that they talk to the health professionals directly.
Wonderful, thank you. This would be one that would be for Dr. Carson, but we'll see if, I do believe that we would be able to answer it. So, will there be a program review this year? Is academic affairs looking at eliminating programs at this time? I don't know who might want to take that.
So I don't speak for Dr. Carson. I'm not aware of any effort systematically to eliminate academic programs this year. And the board asked for some information on our academic programs that Dr. Carson provided this past Wednesday. We're working with Faculty Senate to establish a committee that would be part of looking at our academic programs. Part of that is a commitment that if there is a serious look at eliminating an academic program, that committee would have an opportunity to weigh in and do some analysis on that so that there wouldn't be those types of surprises. But I think I can say with confidence we don't have any any effort or initiative going on that's focused on eliminating academic programs at this time.
Okay, thank you. So this is a CARES Act question, so I believe this would be Mr. Hughes. My understanding is there is still about $2 million left in the CARES Act funds. What are we looking at in utilizing those remaining funds for?
We're looking at anything that we can't, actually, because we are limited on the timeline when we can request those funds. That there are basically 3 different buckets of money that makes up that CARES Act, and I'm assuming this, without the information in front of me, this is on the most recent one, that the bucket that expires by December 1st of this year. So anything that is incurred by the university with regards to the COVID-19 issue and maintaining the campus, the safety of our own students and employees as well, we are looking at anything. There are some that are currently in discussion as far as with the state whether or not this qualifies. The problem that we have on these buckets of money is that there's certain restrictions that apply to all of them. Various, they're not all the same, so there's various restrictions. So not everything you would think of qualifies for reimbursement. We can't, the main thing I would like to get is reimbursement for any lost student tuition, but that doesn't qualify. So more or less, it's expenses that we have incurred, such as the health center costs that we're incurring. We may be looking at additional, and Mr. Fullerton can address this, an additional person at the health center that could assist with testing. And in doing so, we will be able to turn that contract that we have through Freeman Hospital into the CARES Act fund for reimbursement. But that's the kind of things that we're looking at, and we're always looking for anything we can think of that would be qualified for those expenses.
Great, thank you. Could one of you speak to plans that may be happening or any mention of commencement? I do believe that was something, since Dr. Carson cannot be here today.
I can begin.
Go ahead.
So we are looking at commencement with the assumption that we won't be likely back to normal. So I believe the commencement group and Dr. Carson are strongly considering the idea of some type of walkthrough commencement where students would have the opportunity to come into the auditorium and have a commencement, but there would be a continuous flow of students. And I think Carl Junction High School took that approach as well. So that's what we're focusing on. There are a lot of questions, logistics. I think I saw a calculation where that might take well over 8 hours, so we have to think that through. But the goal is to provide our students with a meaningful commencement experience in a safe way.
Wonderful, thank you. So this is another COVID question. Some universities, especially in the East Coast, are having all students test once a week. Have we thought about a policy like that?
We actually did. We've talked to the health department and then had an extensive meeting with about a dozen members of the Freeman Health System that we work with quite regularly. That was actually not recommended because that gives you a point in time. One, we don't have the facilities and the capabilities to test all of our students on that regular of a basis. The estimates, if we tested all of our students at the beginning of the semester, would have been it would have taken over a 2-week period to get all of our on-ground students to be tested. The problem with that is that gives you a baseline at that point, but then also doesn't give you a baseline after that. The tests are very expensive, and with the numbers of tests, the response time of getting those back would be over the 2-week window. And so even if you had a positive, you wouldn't have the results until then. So it was determined to not be a highly effective method. We did test all of the residence hall students at the beginning of the semester. We did test all of the athletes that were non-residence hall because they are a close group that are together several times a day. And then also right now we are testing random students, students that are presenting and any that are symptomatic or any that feel that they've had an exposure. They can be tested at the health center.
So this kind of piggybacks on that. So is there a schedule being looked at to test students that do not live in the dorms? And what does the athletic students being tested look like? So I don't know if that's a two-part.
Yeah, a couple different things. There is not a set schedule because, again, with flu season coming on and just with the normal symptoms, we're still treating non-COVID students at the health center as well, but the symptoms for COVID are so like other ailments that there is a higher percentage of folks that are presenting and asking for testing. And so right now we are averaging about 20 to 25 people a day that are being tested. With those rates, we're getting those response rates back and the test results within 24 hours. As those numbers go up in the community and at Missouri Southern, then those response rates may lag a little bit. And so our testing right now is for trying to identify those students that might be exposed and or exhibiting some symptoms.
So let's shift over to Dr. Hodson. How can the campus community help in the recruitment activities to ensure that we help meet the goals that you expressed?
That's fantastic. Thank you for that question. We have a new admissions dean. Dr. Shelley Hewitt joined us on September 1st, and one of the things that she is laser focused on is ways to leverage the enthusiasm and the talent and the resources we have across campus to maximize that recruitment. So I don't necessarily have a specific answer today, but I do know that there will be many, many ways for faculty and staff and existing students across the campus to participate in the recruitment process. If you are interested in assisting, I would encourage you to reach out directly to Dr. Hewitt and let her know of your enthusiasm for that. That's a great offer, and we will absolutely take you up on that offer.
So, Mr. Hughes, this comes to you. What is MSSU doing regarding minimum wage increases taking place on January 1st?
We are actually, I mentioned that to the board Wednesday, that we are looking at that. We're looking for a way that the increase is going to be for everybody's benefit. It'll be a 30-cent increase beginning January 1st, going from $12 to $12.30. So our minimum wage at the campus will need to be going up to $12.30. So we will be raising individuals that are currently making less than that up to that level. Unfortunately, we will not be able to adjust a lot of the individuals above that level accordingly, but it doesn't stop there. You know, this is the first wave of a three-part wave that we will have to address. For calendar year 22, the rate will go from the $10.30 that I just mentioned to $11.85. Then the following year, it will go up to $12. So we will have a major task in front of us budgetarily to address all those issues.
I guess this question might be for all of you. Is there anything staff can do to help students who are in quarantine or on or off campus, like providing necessities or meals? Maybe more of a Darren first.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, and we appreciate that. With the, again, trying to cooperate and coordinate all of our resources, I would reach out to either housing or the health center to see. Again, we're working with not only students on campus, but our students that are commuters that live off campus as well. And so even if it's a simple, card writing, and again, I know people today don't seem to write letters or cards, but I think that's a great thought. And even email correspondence. I think anytime a student has to isolate and or quarantine, there is that sense of loneliness because they may be home with their families or they may not be. They may be in their apartment by themselves or those things. And so we do have staff that are reaching out multiple times a day to talk to them, but it's limited. So we appreciate that thought, and just reach out to us and we'll talk to the COVID committee about systematic ways they can help.
This one, again, is something that Dr. Carson would answer if she was here, but I do believe that we do have an answer for it. So it is in regards to the nursing program. I know there are things being done, and we're talking to students about the program and future plans. Can we talk to you a little bit about what Dr. Schooler and Dr. Hackett are doing?
So again, I'll start and others may have more information. With regards to our current students, I know that Dr. Schooler has been a point in contact for our students this fall to help them understand potential impacts of this and potential options. And I also know that Dr. Beals, along with, I believe, Lorna Hackett and Dr. Carson, have met with our students on multiple occasions, so they have good information and we're finding ways to support them. There's a lot of other activity going on, including developing a revised curriculum. So there's a external consultant working with our nursing faculty on that process, and it's certainly our commitment to have a really high quality nursing program in the future. So those are some of the activities going on, and I don't know if anyone else would have more information in light of Dr. Carson's not being here today.
Thank you. This is another question that's very giving, I think. How can we include all areas on campus to fulfill the desire to obtain student assistance funds through the foundation office? Dr. Hodson?
Absolutely. So you'll recall that immediately after we left for spring break and we're online for COVID, there was the Lions Helping Lions initiative, where we solicited funds from faculty, staff, alumni, donors to provide some revenue to assist students who were struggling with expenses related to COVID. And that was very successful, and I want to thank all the individuals that participated in that initiative. We will be launching a similar enterprise related to the emergency fund. Darren and his team will be working on the parameters and the criteria through, I think, financial aid. But the fundraising, we will reach out again to faculty, staff, donors across the community and the university, and there will be an opportunity for you to participate. Thank you for that offer.
Here's another COVID-related question. I don't know why we have so many. If an individual is housed with a positive individual and request that they quarantine, is it also requested that they be tested prior to returning to campus?
Again, that's a health question that I would refer to the health center, because many times we've heard from the health department that they are not required to be tested. If they are non-symptomatic, even if they are in the same household but can distance, some of the requirements are that the person that is on isolation be wearing a mask, that the person on quarantine wear a mask, and if they're able to separate and they're non-symptomatic, there are certain times where they would say no, they may not be tested. And so again, I would recommend they talk to their health care professional or reach out to the health center here to get that concrete guidance.
Could you give us the definition of the difference between isolation and quarantine?
Great question. Isolation is if you are positive, and that is the separation. Quarantine means that you may have been a potential exposure, been in the vicinity of someone, and again, that's that 15-minute time measure, less than 6 feet. So a quarantine could be that exposure, or if symptoms are coming on, you may quarantine, and then if you have a positive test, you would go into isolation. So quarantine is the precautionary, and then isolation is if you are sick, symptomatic, or have had a positive test.
We'll stay with you. Are the on-campus students getting meals delivered to them while they're in isolation? How is that working?
Absolutely, and I want to give a shout out to the Residence Life staff and the Fresh Ideas staff that they are delivering meals. And again, we have students that are on, there are 5 different meal plans. So some students only want a couple meals a day, some want 4 meals a day, but those students are being accommodated. They're getting to-go meals from Fresh Ideas, and those are being delivered by the residence hall staff if they're on campus. If they're off campus and not on a meal plan, then they're on their own for those meals. But the residence hall staff and Fresh Ideas are pumping out a lot of to-go meals for those students that are precautionary.
If there are any that may be having difficulties with that, who would they contact?
I would reach out to Josh Doak, Director of Housing, the Director of our Residence Life program. He would be the main point of contact, and then he can address any issues with Fresh Ideas.
So this is always, it seems like, the question of the day. Are we looking at going online after Thanksgiving? Given many given that many students, faculty, and staff might likely be exposed to a wider group of people over the Thanksgiving break?
At this time, the university has not made a decision to do that, but I can say the COVID task force, that is one of the agenda items that has resurfaced and will be discussed this coming week with that task force. So we'll see what the recommendation from that group is and then take that recommendation back to the administration.
So I did have a question come in. How are we to send notes to those with COVID with HIPAA?
We have to be very careful, and again, we can't release individual information, but we can, if you want to send notes, we'll talk to the health center and the task force on that to see. They're almost going to have to be anonymous notes, but we'll work out a system for that, and then we'll circulate that to the campus so that you know how you can put notes in there.
Are there plans put in place if the campus should be forced to work from home coming up in the time being? Would that relate back to the document that the COVID team is?
Absolutely. The contingency plan, the university had to pivot quickly in the spring, and everyone across the country went totally online, so there wasn't a staged process for that. So our committee and task force right now are looking at this contingency plan. Even if the university were forced to go online for the classes, that does not necessarily mean the university would shut down totally. So there can be, if we're looking at it for the time frame, there will be a much measured approach to that as opposed to just an all or none measure. And so that document's being looked at by the committee again this week, and then hopefully we'll be able to finalize it and get it back out to the community.
Wonderful, thank you. So I think, Mr. Hughes, this would be for you. Is there a timeline on getting the Bud Walton Theater's Havoc system working?
There's no timeline at this point. We have to wait to see where we are budgetarily. So everything is on the table. If things do not change and we can scrape up a few dollars, we're obviously going to look at a lot of things to fix around here.
Back to you, Dr. Fuller, or Mr. Fullerton. What levels of positive testing would the university consider closing, changing plans? Do we have a percentage in place, or what is that?
We're looking at different percentages, but the university has not set a percentage across the board. If you look at different universities, and we've benchmarked across the country, and then especially here in the Midwest, it's comparing apples to oranges. Some have total student population, some have a faculty staff population, some have residence halls. We're monitoring all of those factors, as well as the amount of cases in the community, the amount of hospital space in the community, and the access to testing if we're not able to get tests and not able to get the test results back. So we're monitoring all of those and providing information back to the president and the administration, but there is not a set percentage at this point of a 5% or a 10% population.
Here is another COVID question. I have had a few students who have indicated they live with somebody who has tested positive, meaning that student would need to quarantine. However, they have not received notification from the health center or anyone on campus that they need to quarantine. I'm assuming because they have not been tested. How do they determine when these students should be returning to class?
That's a great question. Our students on campus come from the 9 county areas surrounding Joplin predominantly, and then of course our out-of-state and some of our international students. If they are a domestic student, they will be responsible to the health department that is in their home residency. So if you're a Jasper County resident, then the Jasper County Health Department or the Joplin City Health Department will take responsibility. If you're Barton County, Lawrence County. And so many of those students, if they're not presenting to the health center, they haven't been tested by the health center will have no knowledge of those quarantines and or isolations unless we're notified by the student themselves or the health department in those locations. And so it's crucial for our students to communicate, even if they've not received any information from their own health department, to communicate with our health center so they can give them that appropriate advice, because many times there will be a delay with a local health department. So we encourage them, any questions at all, or if you are dealing with someone that is questioning quarantine, please reach out to the health center directly.
We did have a note come in from Mr. Goodwin that said the Havoc is working in Bud Walton. So just wanted to make note of it. With the amount of technology available to distribute to faculty, staff, and students, are there any plans to purchase technology to enable a remote work and or learning environment?
As far as a campus-wide plan, yes and no. There is not a plan to buy 400 laptops or those sort of things. We are taking requests from faculty and staff, or suggestions even from students, for the CARES Act funding for things. We're looking at, I know IT has purchased many software platforms to help. They're looking at potential hotspots that could be checked out on a limited basis. We have some laptops that can be checked out on a limited basis. And so we are looking at different technological enhancements or things that can assist the students, faculty, or staff in the digital environment, but not a mass campus-wide switching to an online environment. One thing technology-wise that we would want to recommend to people, please use the Campus Clear Act, the application. Right now, I think we're sitting at about 40% of the campus population have downloaded that, and so that gives you a listing of symptoms, and if you click on there that you have no symptoms, you're good to go. If you have symptoms, it advises you to reach out either to your health professional or the health center. If our students, faculty, and staff are using that, and we think before we come to campus, many of us are just used to coming to campus because I always have a headache or those things. If it's something unusual or something that's just come on, definitely you want to talk to the health center before you come to campus if you're not feeling well.
Is there any discussion, ongoing discussion, about a telework policy for employees on a case-by-case basis separate from COVID? And what is the status of the discussion?
Yes, we are currently looking into a telecommuting policy and procedure that should address employees possibly working from home. Our emphasis will be looking at serving our students on a face-to-face basis, so some of those departments that are strict, meet with students on an ongoing basis is going to be more difficult. And we look at other factors as well, because there's going to be some restrictions and limitations on who qualifies and the length of the telecommunication that they're off campus. The university continues to accommodate telework situations that are COVID related through the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. That's a tough one, FFCRA. But there's no timeline on that policy, but we are currently looking into that.
Wonderful, thank you. When students have tested positive and told they need to quarantine, are they doing so in the same housing, or are there dorm rooms left for isolation for those students to move to?
If a student, and just to clarify because you use quarantine, if a student's positive, they would be isolation and not quarantine. If an isolation patient that is positive or a student that's positive would be moved to a different facility. Quarantines may be in the same room if they're not showing symptoms or those sort of things. But if they're a positive, they would be moved to a separate space.
So if they're positive, they would be moved, and then that roommate that needed to stay in quarantine would stay in there.
And it depends on if that roommate, many of our students only see their roommate on the weekends or those sort of things. So if they've not had exposure to the roommate, that 15 minutes, especially, we have 5 different styles of housing, and so if they're in the quads, the students have their own bedroom, bathroom, they may not have that qualifying 15 minutes, 6 feet or less exposure. And so again, if they are contacted, if it's a student on campus, the health center is working with all of those students. And so they would be contacted. If it's a student off campus, they can reach out to the health center, or they should get an order from the health department indicating if they have to quarantine or not. If they're not contacted by the health department, that means because whoever the positive or the potential exposure has not identified that I was around that person for that 15 minutes or more for the less than 6 feet.
Okay, wonderful. And gentlemen, that's all of our questions. We don't have any more today, so we want to thank you all for your time and being here today. And Would anybody like to say anything else before we head out?
I just want to thank everyone for their participation. Been sitting here thinking about what a town hall meeting would look like a year ago, and the questions and the conversations we'd be having, and of course it's so different, and we are in very challenging, unique times. A lot of these questions have no easy or simple answers, but I can tell you we'll continue to do our best. We'll continue to provide opportunity to communicate and to engage. So thank you, everyone, for what you do in Missouri Southern every day. Stay safe and have a great weekend. Thanks.